Today we're going to have some fun with agnosticism. Yep, I don't believe I've talked about this yet, so hopefully this will be exciting.
First, I explained that when it comes to the existence of God, there's only three possible options. Yes, no, or maybe.
Well, no. When you get down to the absolute truth of things, there can only be yes or no. In reality, there is no maybe option, unless you're talking about people believing in the existence of God. That's what you meant, right?
Or, as I label them, theism, atheism, and agnosticism.
Immediately we have a huge problem. See, you're portraying atheism as if atheists claim that there is no God, and that the answer to, is there a God, is no. However, although that would define an atheist, that's not what we would answer, at least most of us at least. The definition of atheist is just a theist, someone who isn't a theist. So as long as someone doesn't answer yes to the question, is there a God, it means they're an atheist. If you answered maybe, then ta-da, you're an atheist, because you're not a theist. It's as simple as that. If you're not a theist, you're an atheist.
Next, I showed that atheism is not a valid position.
When did you even show that? Because so far you haven't shown anything in your video yet, bitch.
The burden of proof is such that for an atheist to be reasonable, they must be able to prove that God, a metaphysically necessary being, is metaphysically impossible.
Unfortunately for you, that's not how it works. I know you'd like it to be that way, but it's not. The burden of proof lies on whoever makes the claim. So in this case, you're claiming that there is a God. All atheists are doing is rejecting that claim due to a lack of evidence. We're not making our own claim. We're not claiming that God does not exist. All we're doing is observing your claim and say, no, not convinced. Besides, atheism is the default position after all. Default positions don't carry burdens of proofs.
Just as it sounds, the atheist must prove that something which has to exist cannot exist.
Your premise is completely false. Whatever you're saying, which I don't know yet because you haven't gone into specifics, but I assume it's a creator of the universe, does not have to exist. But maybe you'll give us something more specific later on. Let's just keep watching.
This is more absurd than trying to prove that light is darkness, or that infinity is equal to zero, and thus can never be done. It is beyond impossible. It's merely silly.
You've got to be kidding me. Instead of attempting to show why a creator is necessary, you instead try to make an analogy on the position of atheism? Get the fuck out of here, boy.
I liken the atheist burden of proof to having to write a persuasive essay proving that words don't exist. It's that silly.
What's silly is your analogies.
At this point, I addressed those faithful viewers who attempted to insert a fourth position, namely the idea that atheism can be defined as merely an absence of belief in the existence of God.
Hardly a fourth position, more like a position that replaces the second and third ones. And this is the position of the vast majority of atheists.
I showed that this still leads either to my definition of atheism, or my definition of agnosticism.
That's actually the point. Our current commonly accepted definition of agnosticism is basically an agnostic atheist, someone who simply rejects the idea of a god. An atheist.
And so, not only was this, in my opinion, an invalid use of the word atheism, but it resulted in atheism meaning either atheism or agnosticism. I didn't find this particularly helpful.
Well, it doesn't matter if you find it helpful or not, that's the definition, and you're gonna have to stick with it. You know what I find funny? Religious people try so hard to redefine atheism in the way they want it to in order to undermine our position, but you can't do that. You can't just redefine what our position means and then attempt to debunk that position.
I find this to be, in terms of rational discourse, like having people try to argue that the red light either means yellow light or red light because all red light really means is not green light.
That analogy only works if our position actually is the red light, but that's not right. In your analogy, atheism would be a green light or non-green light. That's where we stand. You're trying to redefine us as being the red light when all we're saying is not green light.
But reflecting on it, I realized something so obvious that I was amazed I hadn't seen it before. I had shown that atheism is an invalid position, because its burden of proof is so big that it becomes literally absurd.
We don't have a position, therefore we don't have the burden of proof on us. For the last time, all we're doing is simply rejecting your claim that God exists. And honestly, if someone actually did make the claim that a God does not exist, that would still be a more likely candidate than your stupid position.
But then I realized, if atheism is not a valid position, neither is agnosticism. Think about it. If no one can logically say no, then on what basis can anyone logically say maybe?
Except people can and will say no. You haven't done anything to disprove atheism.
Once no is no longer a valid option, then maybe is not a valid option either.
You're treading into the same flaw that Pascal's wager has. You're assuming that there are only these two possible positions, but there isn't. What if a god did exist except it's the Islamic god? What if the creator of the universe was Vishnu? In this case, even if you disproved atheism, or completely proved that a god exists without a shadow of a doubt, you still have the problem on who is behind this, and at this point there's no logical reason to believe that it's your god.
Now, for those of you who are getting caught up in the topic and can't see the logic for the implications, let's talk about something else for a minute. Imagine a chicken taco. Close your eyes and picture a chicken taco before you. Here is the question. Is there cheese on this chicken taco?
What the fuck?
When you reply, you have three possible options. Yes, there is cheese on the taco. No, there is not cheese on the taco. Or maybe, there might be cheese on the taco, but there might not be. You don't know.
But let's make this analogy more accurate to the topic at hand. Is there something else other than chicken on the taco? Yes, there's cheese. No, there's nothing else. Maybe there might be something else. Yes, there are onions. Yes, there's steak. Yes, there's salsa, etc., etc., etc.
Now, I'd like to point out the fact that I'm not asking what you think about the taco. I'm asking about the taco. You may say, I lack a belief in the existence of the cheese, but that doesn't mean that I think there is no cheese.
Wow, so you do know what our position is. Wow, unbelievable.
I don't care. This isn't about you. It's about the taco. Is there cheese on the taco? Yes or no?
In that case, maybe will never be an option. In the hard reality of things, there is no maybe. Either there is something on that taco or there isn't. However, that doesn't help your position at all, since your new definition here could completely undermine your previous arguments.
If you say maybe, you are saying you believe yes and no to both be possible options.
What? But just now you just said we're not focused on the opinion, but rather on the taco. The fuck?
Now, here is where my revelation hinges. If I can show you that saying no is not a valid option, then as a result, you must say yes. If you don't have the option of saying no as a valid possibility, then you only have yes as an option.
So he continues to blabber on his nonsense for a good few minutes, and since we've already debunked his stupid ass, I'm gonna skip it.
Agnosticism remains valid only when it is agnosticism or ignorance of God's identity, but not ignorance of his existence. His existence is just as valid as yours. Actually, more so, since he is a metaphysically necessary being and you are contingent. If he didn't exist, you wouldn't either.
What a fucking claim you got there. Sadly, your premise is completely incorrect. You're under the assumption that God is necessary, but he's not. Everything we see in the universe is explained by natural and scientific means. I hope you actually gave your reasoning in another video, because it sure isn't in this one.
Doesn't that just make you need to lay down and play Angry Birds for several hours?
Get the fuck out of here.
Sometime soon I shall get around to proving to you that Jesus Christ is God as explained in the Bible.
Oh, so you haven't done that yet. Well, that's great. I'll be looking forward to that video. I'll have to continue this response when that's released, which means this video's over. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.